This is Lizzie, all the way from Savannah, Georgia, and you're listening to Scandal Water,
where the tea is hot and the conversation lively.
Your hosts, Candy
and Ashley,
will discuss a peculiar story somehow related to the entertainment industry. This podcast might not change the world, but it just might satisfy your thirst for an intriguing tale.
Oh, it's that time of day. Tune in and hear what the ladies say. It's time to bend your ear when the silver screen appears. Stories about the stage and screen and everything in between. So come on and join the fun. The curtain opens in 3, 2, 1. Stories and scandal water, it's where you need to be. Stories and scandal water, let's pour you a cup of tea.
Hello, Ashley.
Hello, Candy.
You're excited about today's topic.
I am very
aren't you?
excited about today's topic. It's one that I requested.
Yes, you did. But let's not tell them just yet. How about we start with this?
Okay.
Nearly 100 years ago, it's been that long.
I know.
Here was a police report that, by the way, this was kept in the National Archives, all right? The car was found in such a position as to indicate that some unusual proceeding had taken place, the car being found halfway down a grassy slope well off the main road with its bonnet buried in some bushes, as if it had got out of control. In the car was found a fur coat, a dressing case containing various articles of ladies' wearing apparel, and a driving license indicating that the owner was Mrs. Agatha Christie of Sunningdale Berks. That's our topic for today. It is the mysterious disappearance of Agatha Christie, which, guys, I did not know about
You did
until
not.
Ashley suggested this topic. So tell us again, why did you suggest this?
Because it's so fascinating. She never talked about it. This happened to her. There was I'm sure you're going to go into the details, so I don't want to spoil the details, but an incident happened in her life and she just left. She left and she was gone for 10 days. And there was a worldwide, well, not worldwide, but there was a huge manhunt for her. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was even called in to help. And by the time he was called in, they were like, no, never mind. We found her. And she was found in some hotel under a different name with no memory of who she was and no memory of anything that had happened. And some people said it was because she was doing it as a publicity stunt for her next book that came out, which became one of her bestsellers.
Right.
And some people said, no, it really was because of this event that happened in her life, but nobody can agree. And she never would discuss it. Even in her autobiography, she did not discuss it.
We're going to come back to that. Oh, this is, it was fascinating.
Yes.
When Ashley told me about this, I'm like, how have I never heard of this?
Yeah.
But it's because she went on to have such a full, long life and was so popular that I think, yes, people did talk about it, but I think her popularity and her incredible success just kind of overshadowed it for a lot of people.
And she never talked about it.
Yeah, but it has actually been in the news recently because were you aware of this best-selling book called The Christie Affair?
No.
Oh, goodness. That's the first thing that started popping up when I
Really?
started researching.
Was it about her
Yes.
husband's affair?
Well, it is a fictionalized retelling, this novel by Nina de Gramont called The Christie Affair that came out this past February. It was so popular, it is fictionalized. It's about the whole incident. But because it was so popular, there was an announcement made early last December that they are turning this into a little series adaptation starring Daisy Ridley.
No kidding.
Yes.
As Agatha?
No, she stars as the mistress of Agatha Christie's husband. And both the book and the series center around the mistress rather than Agatha Christie, apparently.
What?
I know, but bestseller. Now, I mean, I am curious. I want to read it now or at least watch the miniseries. But we today are going to tell the real story,
As far as we can
tell,
figure.
based on the facts that we were able to find surrounding Agatha Christie's mysterious disappearance.
The mystery author has a mystery of her own.
Exactly. Just in case you don't know Agatha Christie as well as Ashley does, I
I
pulled
love
up.
her. I love her. I don't have a lot of collections, but it is my goal to one day collect all of her books. If you look behind you, that's what I have so far.
Oh, goodness, you have a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Haven't read all of them, but I'm trying to collect all of the
You're
paperbacks.
helping to support that estate.
I am. Yes, I love her books.
Well, I thought for context, I'm not doing a biography of Agatha, but I thought for context, I would pull a few fast facts.
Okay.
Okay, so Agatha Christie's books are estimated to have sold over 2 billion copies, putting her third on the list of all-time bestsellers behind
Bible and Shakespeare.
There you go. She had actually written poetry and short stories for quite some time, ever since she was young, but she did not get into writing detective novels until her sister bet her that she couldn't write a good one. And that's what led to her first attempt, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. Have you read it?
Yes.
And that, I believe, is when her protagonist, how do you say it?
Hercule Poirot.
Thank you.
With the mustaches and the egg-shaped head.
Yes, yes. I think that's where he obviously made his first appearance, since that was her first detective novel. And that first attempt actually was picked up by a publisher with the condition being put out that she had to alter the ending. Apparently they didn't like her first attempt at the ending. According to her estate, Agatha Christie is the only crime writer to have created 2 equally famous protagonists.
Miss
You know
Marple.
there you go. And Newsweek article I read there gives Agatha Christie credit for inventing the first person narrator who turns out to be the perpetrator of the crime. That little device that
The murder
crime
of
novelists
Roger
will use.
Ackroyd.
Yes, yes. And also, and then there were none. And the last fast fact, talking about how prolific she is, it really honestly made me think of Stephen King, because
Yeah.
there was one time, I don't know if you guys remember this, on Saturday Night Live, they had this one little bit where they had somebody playing Stephen King, and literally the whole time he's being interviewed, his fingers are typing ferociously. He's not
Yes.
even looking at the
Yes.
paper.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden he pauses and he goes, "Oh no, I've got writer's block." And after like 3 seconds, he
He's
goes,
fine.
"Nah,"
Nah.
and he starts typing
Yes.
again. That's what I thought of.
Yeah, they said they found just pieces of paper with plots and just envelopes, and just the prolific output that she had was so amazing. I kind of compare her and Harper Lee. Harper Lee wrote that great American novel To Kill a Mockingbird, and then she was so frozen from the
pressure of trying to meet up or
Yeah,
exceed.
she could
Yeah,
never
the quality of the first one.
follow it up. With
Yeah.
Agatha, I almost wonder if Harper had just gone, you know what, I'm just gonna put something out. Some Agathas were great, some were middling, and some were terrible, but she just kept putting it out, and then she may have a not great one, and then she come out with a masterpiece, and then not great, but she just kept doing it. And I kind of wonder, like, Harper, I wish you could have had that kind of drive to just
Yeah.
keep going, and some would be good and some would be bad, but just keep going.
I got the impression that Agatha Christie almost approached it from a factory type mentality. They said she would put out 2 to 3 novels per year as a rule. That was in quotes, as a rule. One of her other things was she almost always put a book out right around Christmas, so that it became a
gift.
tradition.
And a gift.
Yes, that you would give it to another person as, one of the other fans. And they even came up with a slogan for it, "A Christie for Christmas." It was part of their marketing
that's
campaign.
cute.
They were brilliant.
They were. Her books are also called cozies because you could just read them in a couple hours. They weren't very bloody. There wasn't a lot. It was just fun little puzzles that you could put together.
That you had the satisfaction of it was always solved at the end. Everything was right with the world.
Yes.
The hero was able to solve it and save the day. There you go. Yeah. Well, just to give a tiny bit about her background, she was born on September 15th, 1890 in England, the youngest of 3 children. Her parents were Frederick and Clara Miller. And apparently they were doing okay because they were living in a villa called Ashfield. If you have a villa that you've named, I think you're doing okay.
You're doing all right by yourself. Yeah.
And she would later write in her autobiography, quote, "I had a very happy childhood. I had a home and a garden that I loved, a wise and patient nanny." If you also have a nanny, you're doing okay.
You're doing okay.
Yeah. "As father and mother, 2 people who loved each other dearly and made a success of their marriage and of parenthood." But I'm sure you know this, things fell
died.
apart when, even before that, he'd actually lost their money.
Right. I was going to
Yeah.
say, I saw a YouTube video where they said that they think that he had been having heart attacks, and they think it was brought on because he was not mismanaging their money, but not spending it in the best way. Like he he wasn't foolish with the money, but it's like his investments weren't working and he was trying to keep everything afloat and it just wasn't working and the stress was getting to him and he passed away when she was 9, I think. 9 or 11. I don't remember
11,
which one.
I believe is what I
and because
saw.
her mother's dad died when she was 9.
No.
That's actually how you probably don't want to know this, but a little trivia is how her parents met is her mother's father died when she was 9. And so the mother was left kind of destitute. So she sent her daughter, her 9-year-old daughter, to her sister that had gotten married and was doing very well. I think it was a sister. But she grew up with this family and their last name was Miller. So I thought, well, maybe that's where she got the last name. But I'm going to get this wrong. I think Frederick was the son of the dad. So I don't think that they were related.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but that's just my recollection.
Well, what I saw, and I did not do a deep dive, forgive me if I make the wrong inferences, but it sounded like he wasn't the best at managing their money. In fact, in one of the articles, it said that Agatha at some point wrote, quote, he was a lazy man with a simple and loving heart. And she added, quote, he would not have been particularly good at working anyway. So he just kind of lived off the inheritance. And yes, he did manage some things, but not so well. Yeah. And then as Ashley said, he died of pneumonia when she was 11. And that from that point on, her mom struggled. Now she's trying to support the kids, basically living off this very small allowance.
Strange because that's what happened to her mom.
Yeah.
Grandma,
So
grandma
it repeated that
it just,
pattern for her. That would be so concerning, so hard. But of course, Agatha was well educated and cultured and also attractive and confident. So as she got older, she had plenty of suitors, but the one that caught her eye was Archibald Christie, who was an officer in the Royal Flying Corps that she met at a dance in 1912. They married 2 years later in 1914, and Archie went off to France to fight in the Great War. But while he was gone, do you know what she did?
She volunteered in the infirmary in the poison division.
Yes. Now, she also cared for injured soldiers at a local hospital.
Yeah.
So, but it was her work in that local dispensary where she got the
Learned
idea
about the poisons.
Yes. And they said that she developed, quote, a fascination for poison, according to Laura Thompson, who wrote a biography about her called Agatha Christie, an English Mystery. And she went on to say, quote, the beautiful look of the bottles, the exquisite precision of the calculations, the potential for mayhem contained within order captivated the future crime writer and caused her to incorporate poisoning in several of her murder mysteries.
Right. We were on, to go back to our road trip episode, we were touring some stuff on Jekyll Island, and our tour guide was like, oh, does anybody know what kind of plant this is? It's poisonous. And I think it was oleander. I was like, oh, that's a poison. He's like, how do you know that? I said, I've read Agatha Christie. I know what kind of poisons are from the flowers.
Poisons.
Yeah.
As we mentioned in our fast facts, she started writing detective novels in 1916. And it did take a while for a publisher to accept her. But then when she was accepted by a publisher, they basically cheated her.
How?
They tricked her into signing a 5-book deal with very low royalties. So her first several books, she's making almost nothing, but she's beholden to them. She is in this contract with them. By the start of 1926, now she's finally in a great place with her career because in June of that year, she published her 6th novel where she's finally free of the old publisher, and her new publisher, William Collins, which is eventually going to be HarperCollins. The book is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and it ends up, I think, didn't you say at the beginning that this is one that ended up getting a lot of critical acclaim?
Oh yeah, it's considered one of her very best, if not her very best novel. And some people said, I can't remember if this is one of the reasons, they said that she broke the rules of the detective novel, but other people read it and said, no, she was very fair. She played fair the whole time. But other people said she broke the rules.
Because of the way it turns out the twist at the end. Yes. Everything I saw, I've not read it, but everything I saw gave a lot of props to this book. And it had a lot of critical acclaim according to the sources. It also made her a lot more money. At the start of 1926, you probably would have also said that her personal life was looking pretty good because at this point, she's been married to Archie for many years now. And she has a daughter, Rosalind, who would have been about 6 at this time. But then suddenly everything started going wrong. Do you remember the first thing that
Her mom died.
Yes. Her beloved mother, Clara, passed away in April, and Agatha took it very hard.
They were extremely close. extremely close.
One source said that in losing her mother, she lost one of her closest confidants. And a BBC article said that her emotional distress was compounded by the fact that her husband, Archie, was not at all supportive. He didn't even attend the funeral, according to this source. And it said that she was also suffering from some writer's block because remember, she's so prolific. Apparently, with her grief and, just everything she's dealing with, she was struggling a little bit. So she's in a bad place right now. And then not long after, in early summer, while she's still grieving.
And I think she's also trying to get her mother's estate taken care of.
Yes.
So she's cleaning out her mother's home.
That is correct.
Going through all of the memories, dealing with the grief, dealing with the loss.
The paperwork.
The all of the
legal
stuff that comes from that. Yes.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. A lot.
And especially if you're not feeling supported by your husband. Yeah, and taking care of a child. But in early summer, Archie reveals to Agatha that he is in love with another woman named Nancy Neal, and he wants a divorce. Bombshell. She's devastated. She obviously does not want the divorce. And so they do continue to live together for several months. One source said it was for their daughter's sake. I'm not sure why, whether it was that Agatha just said, I don't want this. But regardless, they're together, but he's continuing his affair with Nancy.
Right. He's leaving on the weekend to go hang out with his friends and Nancy.
Yeah. And sometimes what I saw was the phrase, going to see my friends or be with friends simply meant I'm going to be with Nancy. Yeah, it was just code. So on the night of Friday, December 3rd, 1926, after another big argument between the couple, Archie told Agatha he was leaving to spend the weekend with friends, which she knew, of course, meant he's headed straight towards Nancy Neal. Later that evening, one source named it as being around 9:45 p.m., 36-year-old Agatha removed her wedding ring, kissed her daughter Rosalind goodnight as she was sleeping in her bed, and Agatha drove away from the house in her Morris Cowley car. Did I say that correct?
I don't know. Forgive us if she didn't. I have no idea.
Leaving Rosalind in the care of household servants.
Okay.
Agatha's abandoned car was found, lights on the edge of a chalk pit by an eerie natural spring known as the Silent Pool near Guilford. The New York Times reported, quote, the novelist's car was found abandoned near Guilford on the edge of a chalk pit, the front wheels actually overhanging the edge. The car evidently had run away, and only a thick hedge growth prevented it from plunging into the pit. And then remember the police report that I read there at the top? I'm going to repeat that really quickly. The car was found in such a position as to indicate that some unusual proceeding had taken place, the car being found halfway down a grassy slope well off the main road with its bonnet buried in some bushes as if it had got out of control. In the car was found a fur coat, a dressing case containing various articles of ladies' wearing apparel, and a driving license indicating that the owner was Mrs. Agatha Christie of Sunningdale, Berks. To add to that, according to Newsweek, the license was expired.
Oh.
I'm not sure if that's significant, but I just thought it was an interesting detail. I'm going to pause for a second. What are some impressions you have when you hear some of those details?
Well, I think that she just had a psychological break. And she just was going out into the night and seeing where it took her in the car. She veered off the road and just probably started walking and just was devastated. That's my opinion of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, some of the details that strike me, the car overhanging as though it was almost going over, the things that are left behind. You know, why would you leave your stuff behind? Like, those are some of the questions
I think
that
she just got out of the car and just started walking. I'm not going to say that she was suicidal in effect. I think the car probably went off the road. She just was so devastated that she wasn't really paying attention and she just got out and started walking. But that goes to, I know we're going to talk about in the armchair. Yeah.
Okay. Well, many people obviously assumed the worst, and the police investigation began to go find this missing woman. A man who had seen Agatha Christie that night reported that she was, quote, sparsely dressed for such an inclement morning and that she appeared strange in her manner. The police description put out so that people could try to identify Agatha said that the missing woman was, quote, age 35, height 5'7", hair reddish and shingled, eyes gray, complexion fair, well built, dressed in gray and dark gray cardigan, small green velour hat, wearing a platinum ring with one pearl but no wedding ring. So her disappearance is obviously very sensational and widely reported in the news. It made the front page of the New York Times, and one publication offered a 100-pound reward for information leading to her whereabouts. 15,000 volunteers joined the search to go try to find her. They brought in biplanes at some point, bloodhounds on the ground. In some cases, they were dredging some lakes and streams. They searched London buses. The Home Secretary put pressure on the police to get this crime solved. And, as you've already foreshadowed or told us already, I don't know where this fell in the timeline, but at some point some prominent people became involved. Dorothy Sayers visited the scene of the disappearance.
Yep.
And then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who, we said this in a previous episode, he was a devoted spiritualist. According to the sources I saw, he consulted a medium to try to get this mystery solved. And Newsweek gave a few more details. Their article said that he gave one of Agatha's gloves to a medium, Horace Leaf, who said she was still alive, quote, half dazed, half purposeful, end quote.
Well, that covers it all.
And would turn up the following week.
That covers it all. She's half dazed, half purposeful. Yeah. Well, then you're all covered.
Yes.
No matter what. I was right.
Way to step out on a limb there.
Yeah, really. Come on, Mr. Leaf on the limb.
So the journalists, of course, are putting forth so many different theories about why she's disappeared.
Oh yeah, because this is the 20s. We know what journalism was like, thanks to
Exactly.
Maureen Dallas Watkins. It's like sensationalism.
Yeah, what's going to sell the papers?
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're all over this, I'm
Yes.
sure. Some people are saying she drowned herself. Others are saying she's been murdered by her husband. Newsweek had a quote that said, "For most, suspicion fell on her husband, Colonel Archie Christie, a dazzling First World War fighter pilot turned provincial bore and a man who seems to have been more interested in golf than his wife." I kind of like their little quote.
I do
I
too.
thought I would put it in
We'll
there.
just leave that in
It's
there.
an editorial comment,
Yeah.
but other people said that this whole thing was a publicity stunt, that she was
Because
simply
of
trying.
Aykroyd.
Yeah, she's just trying to promote her novels. This is nothing but publicity. So many different theories are bouncing around. After 3 days of searching for the novelist, the police called it off because they said that Agatha's brother-in-law had received a letter from her, and that letter reportedly said she was going to a Yorkshire spa for rest and treatment. But then the police resumed the search a day or two later because they didn't really trust the information in the letter. They weren't sure that this was accurate. So one newspaper report said the police actually suspected suicide. And one of the things that they did was they searched that pond called the Silent Pool, or referred to as the Silent Pool. Going back to this letter, there were actually 3. Have you heard about the letters?
No.
Okay. It was not revealed until December 10th that before leaving her home, Agatha had actually written 3 letters. This was cool. Some of the sources I saw actually gave archival documents. So I actually got to look at the New York Times article that was published on December 10th, 1926
Nice.
that actually told about this. I think this is fascinating. One of the letters was to this brother-in-law, and he apparently told the police that he had destroyed it. So they did not get to actually see the letter. Everything must have just been coming through what he said. Another letter was to Agatha's secretary, and according to that article that I saw, it said, quote, "The police thought it had been destroyed, but it has been found and handed to them. Its most significant passage was, 'I must get away. I cannot stay here in Sunningdale much longer.' The third letter was to Agatha's husband, Archie, but the article said it was unposted and, quote, Colonel Christie refused to reveal its contents, stating it was a personal note written evidently before his wife decided to go away."
I bet it was.
Yes.
I bet
So-
he doesn't want that shared.
Right. So this is a full week
Yeah.
after she's been missing that this news about the 3 letters comes out. I thought that was fascinating.
It is cool.
Well, before we go on, why don't we pause there and take a little break?
Let's do it. In the 1920s, it was all the rage to give a Christie for Christmas. What's the hot item 100 years later? Some Scandal Water merch. What would please the Scandal Water fan in your life more than finding a new t-shirt or sticker under the tree? Email scandalwaterpodcast@gmail.com and order yours today.
Or if you're looking for a unique gift idea for the podcast listener in your life, you can give the gift of Scandal Water membership by visiting buymeacoffee.com/scandalwaterpod.
Cheers!
All right, so we're back to see if we can unravel this mystery of Agatha Christie's disappearance. 11 days after she disappeared, on the 14th of December, a musician performing at the Swan Hydropathic Hotel in Harrogate, which was referred to as a spa hotel, reported to the police that he'd seen a woman in the hotel who resembled the missing writer that was all over the papers. Some people, of course, would later make a big joke about the fact that Agatha was exactly where she had said she was in that letter to her brother-in-law.
I'm going to a spa. I
Yeah.
was going to say, did you guys check the spas in Yorkshire?
And I don't know that they did.
Oh
I'm
my
not sure that
gosh.
they actually followed up on that
That's too
lead.
obvious.
Yeah, I'm not positive, but that was definitely a joke that was going around. It's like, why didn't y'all look there? Yeah. So she was, as Ashley said, registered under the last name.
Teresa is the first name she used.
Yeah, she was under the name Teresa Neal, and she used cash from a money belt to pay her way. Now, after her discovery, they talked to different people at the hotel who had been around Agatha, and they said she had acted just like all the other guests. She even sang songs on several evenings. Like, she was interacting just like a hotel guest. When they went to confront Agatha to go claim her, she claimed to have no memory of what had occurred. Basically, I don't know if she said this, but they decided it was some form of amnesia. In a newspaper interview from December 15th of 1926, Archie was quoted as saying, "She has suffered from the most complete loss of memory, and I do not think she knows who she is. She does not know me, and she does not know where she is. I am hoping that rest and quiet will restore her. I am hoping to take her to London tomorrow to see a doctor and specialist." Now, just as a little side note, he says he's going to get her and take her places. The interest in her, this would have been so sensational that one of the things I saw was when they knew that she was going to be traveling, hundreds of people showed up at the London train station to actually try to catch sight of them. Like, her popularity
skyrocketed.
Yes. After this whole thing, she went through the roof. It's crazy. And we've already said this, but her crime novels would absolutely take off from here. It was nothing but up after this.
Crazy.
Yeah. They just resumed their life and they went on with things. The couple did not actually officially divorce until 1928.
So 2 more years?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And he went on to marry his mistress, Nancy Neal, which tells me he was still with her this whole time. They were probably, I guess, trying to make it work. Who knows?
I doubt it.
And Agatha would go on to marry a much younger man named Max Mallowan, who was an archaeologist, and they seemed to be very happy.
They were very, very happy. I referenced this marriage in our Dark Highway episode, remember? Because I said that Verna possibly had a younger suitor. And I said, well, Agatha had a younger suitor. She got married. It was fine to a guy 15 years younger. Yeah, he was an archaeologist. She traveled with him. They were extremely happy. And she was a big enough woman that when Archie passed away, she actually sent a note of condolence to Nancy because they stayed married for the rest of Archie's life.
Yes, I had a note that both couples remained in those second marriages. And just to add one more little thing, I thought it was very cool that Agatha would incorporate her travels and what she, different interesting things that she would discover while she was with Max traveling into her novels then.
Yes.
She was really good at bringing things in. Well, about her disappearance, according to a 2019 New York Times article, Christie herself discussed the incident publicly only once in a 1928 interview she gave to the Daily Mail. She told them she had been driving past a quarry on December 3rd, 1926 when, quote, "There came into my mind the thought of driving into it. However, as my daughter was with me in the car, I dismissed the idea at once. That night I felt terribly miserable. I felt that I could go on no longer. I left home that night in a state of high nervous strain with the intention of doing something desperate. When I reached a point on the road, which I thought was near the quarry, I turned the car off on the road down the hill toward it. I left the wheel and let the car run. The car struck something with a jerk and pulled up suddenly. I was flung against the steering wheel and my head hit something. Up to this moment, I was Mrs. Christie." We're going to come back to this again, but there was this one time she spoke about it. As you've already said, even in her autobiography, she skipped over it. She talked openly about her divorce, all the different pieces, but she would not talk about the disappearance. All of these sources, I mean, every one of them would talk about the mystery of what actually happened. And they would say it's an unsolved mystery. And the theories are still out there. And some of the most popular ones, as nearly as I could tell. One is what you've said. Her biographer, Andrew Norman, argues that she was in a fugue state caused by trauma or depression, while another super popular theory is that she was very deliberate with this. She was trying to embarrass or punish her husband for having the affair, that it was basically a form of revenge or some kind of a vindictive move to try to, like, if you're going to run off with your girlfriend, at least I'm going to make this really miserable and embarrassing for you, like just a vindictive kind of thing. Now, this is interesting. A historian named Lucy Worsley published.
I love Lucy Worsley.
You know her?
I do.
What have you read?
She's the one I've told you about. There was this Henry VIII miniseries, and she inserted herself in scenes. She would walk through modern day landmarks and tell you, here's what's going on. And then they would have a scene that took place back in the day, and they'd have Henry VIII cast, and she'd be one of the maids, and then something would happen. She turned to the camera and she's like, now this is where this would happen. And
I remember this now.
Yeah. I love her. She's got a cute little blonde bob, and she just did something on Agatha. I haven't seen that stuff, but she's a very well-known historian.
Well, that's probably exactly what I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
And you're going to want to read it because
do.
it sounds fascinating.
I follow her on Instagram.
Well, she just published a book in 2022 called Agatha Christie, A Very Elusive Woman, and she put forth this whole perspective about the disappearance. She is quoted as saying, "People talk about this incident as though it's a huge mystery, but it's not a mystery." And she's really definitive. She comes out and she says, Agatha did tell us what happened.
She said, I'm going to Yorkshire to the spa. She's like, here I go.
She actually said it's that same 1928 interview with the Daily Mail. And according to Lucy, Lucy says people just don't want to hear what Agatha was saying because what she was talking about made them uncomfortable. She said that she feels, this is her belief, that Agatha was openly saying, I was dealing with mental illness and struggling, and people just don't want to hear that. Here's an actual quote from Lucy. She actually said in 1926, when I disappeared, it was a really distressing incident of mental illness. I was experiencing suicidal thoughts. All I wanted to do was get away from my cheating husband, the pressure of my life, and to form a new identity for myself. That's kind of Lucy's theory. Based on what was shared in a 2015 CNN article, it sounded to me as though Agatha's grandson, Matthew Pritchard. She has kind of just this one line that follows her of descendants, but it sounds like he agrees. The article says that in a clip posted on the Agatha Christie website, Matthew suggested that Agatha had some sort of breakdown. Here's an excerpt from what he said in that clip. It was, I think, the confluence of these two situations, referring to her mother's death and the husband's request for divorce, that made her ill to such an extent that she eventually disappeared, went off to Harrogate in North Yorkshire, and forgot about herself as an individual. I think it was a mixture of loss of memory and intolerable sadness, almost despair.
Armchair psychologist.
And that brings us to the end of what I wanted to put in front of us from the sources that I looked at. And of course, you know what I'm going to ask you for the armchair.
What do I think?
Yes.
I think it's like I'm with Lucy and Matthew. I think this is not a mystery. It is a mystery in that she never talked about it, but I agree with them. I think she was experiencing a fugue state. It's sort of like what my theory is in our episode about Bernie. I think Bernie entered a fugue state because of the abuse the emotional abuse he was suffering from Marjorie and blah, blah, blah. So that if you want to listen to that, but it's similar to that. I think she had entered a fugue state. She was in deep, deep despair. Her best friend, her mother had gone. You know, there's so much stuff that you have to go through when you're cleaning out and you're looking at all the memories and you're looking at the life and you're thinking of all of that loss. And then your husband, who is not supporting you, comes in and says, by the way, I'm in love with someone else and I don't want to be with you anymore. And it just imploded. I think everything just imploded and she just wanted to get away. I think the reason she probably she was suicidal, but I think her daughter kept her from that because she even said, my daughter was with me, but her daughter wasn't with her.
Oh no, she said her daughter was with her earlier in the day, and she didn't do anything desperate because her daughter was in the car. So later that night,
she came through.
She got in the car and
Okay. Well, I don't know. She may be and it just stopped, or we don't know. We don't know if she was or wasn't, if she was attempting something, but we know she got out of the car. She just wanted to be someone else. And the only name she could think of was the woman that he had just said, I love better than you. So she's literally trying to become the other woman. And she said, I'm going to Yorkshire.
It's interesting. I don't I don't know if I go totally towards the fugue state thing because there's so many things that sound too purposeful to me. Like she
But you
has
gotta
a
think about
money
her-
belt.
Yeah.
I didn't say this, but she took a train to get to the spa hotel. And then she's in the hotel purposely paying for things with that money and singing and dancing. I think I believe that it was that she was struggling. I think that she needed to get away and that I do think that she was on the verge of a breakdown.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I wonder, I don't know if it's, I don't literally know who I am. I don't know if I believe it was full amnesia, full fugue state. I think it was more, I am a woman who is desperate to get away. I don't know how to deal and I'm going to go into denial. I'm going to stick my head in the sand and
Yeah,
try
I could
to
see that.
survive until I know what else to do.
I definitely don't think it was a matter of revenge and or a promotional thing for her book, because you have to think about her personality. She was so private. She was so introverted about her personal life and the fact that she never spoke about it. If she's doing this to punish Archie, she would continually talk about it, and she would talk about what he had done to her, and it would be very sensational, and she would splash scandal everywhere. She didn't do that.
Yeah.
In her autobiography, I remember her packing up like all the letters that he had given her or something, and she put a little Bible verse with it, and it was a verse that's like, if it had been a stranger that had hurt me, I'm going to get the verse wrong, but something about like it, but it was you, someone that I loved, that hurt me. And she put this little verse with it, and she just packed it away, and she never talked about it again. And she was kind when he passed away to his second wife, and it's like she just let that part go. So I just don't feel like she's the kind of personality that would do this just to punish him. I just don't feel that.
Yeah. I don't know her like you do. I haven't read all of her works, but she didn't come across as a vindictive person. She came across as a woman who was very much in control. This woman ran her business. Like she was totally in control of her marketing. Like they talked about how she was forceful in terms of offering her opinions about when this book would come out or how they were going to market it. She was somebody who sounded like she kind of took care of things for her mother. You know, she had servants. I think in my mind, I see her as a woman who's used to, she was working in the hospital, working in dispensaries. This was a woman who did everything and was super competent. And I think probably all of a sudden she feels no control in her life.
Yeah.
Everything is taken away from her.
Yeah.
Everything she thinks she is, what she has, everything is stripped away from her, and she doesn't know what to do. She's just lost. And so she literally...
Fight or flight kicked in, and she chose flight.
That's what I think. I think that's where I land on it.
Yeah. I still think there was a fugue state that started it. She maybe started coming out of it and just was enjoying her time. But I just feel like that flight in the middle of the night, just, I don't know, just like a sudden trauma she just knew she needed to leave, but she didn't know where she was going or what she was going to do. So she prepped for it. She wrote the letter. She said, here's what I'm going to go do. But it just was, I have to get out of here. I just have to go, and not remembering who she was. And they were talking about Agatha being missing at the hotel, and she was like engaging in conversations with people.
Yeah. But you do bring up a good point. Like she literally, before she leaves that night, writes a letter to her
"Here's where I'm
brother-in-law
going."
that says, I'm going to go to this spa.
Yeah.
So there is some intentionality, which, it's very interesting. Again, you feel strongly she was in a fugue state. I don't know about that. I totally agree with you. Something was really going on with her emotional and her mental stability.
Well, if Bernie was in a fugue state, he was still able to, after it happened, he kind of snapped back to himself, but he still started doing really weird things.
I never really believed he was in a fugue
You
state.
didn't?
I didn't. Because,
Well, I think in the action of the crime he was. I don't know. I don't
remember he went up and shot her in the back of the head.
Yeah.
I had problems with that.
That is pretty gross. That's pretty bad, Bernie.
But I think, so we disagree on a few of the details, but I think we both land pretty close together on the mystery itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mystery, not mystery. She just needed to get away. It's what was the impetus to make her leave, and was she actually in some kind of fugue? It just makes the most sense to me. She just seems so responsible. Why would you do that unless there was some kind of snapping? I got to get away. I don't know.
You know what I wonder is, I would love to know the gaps, right? If they went and found her and she's literally saying, I don't know who I am, I don't know who you are. What was that process like for her coming back to herself? And why were they together two
That's
more
the
years
mystery.
before they divorced?
Yeah.
I would love to know what
So
happened.
the 10 days isn't really the mystery. The mystery is, well, how did she get her memory back, guys? If it was gone, what'd you do?
Yeah.
He showed
and
up.
what was life like for their poor child?
Yeah.
Well,
We didn't solve anything.
in a way.
In a way,
I think
yes.
we've come to our own resolution, and we're pretty together on this. Of course, we know who we're going to cheers.
Agatha.
Yes.
Oh, also, I got to say a plug for the musical Something's Afoot. It's one of my very favorite musicals. It's a musical spoof of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None.
Yes.
So it's one of my favorite musicals I've ever done. If you get a chance, look it up on YouTube. I don't know if it's on there, but one of the songs is We Owe It All to Agatha Christie. So let's cheers, Miss Agatha. We owe it all to Agatha Christie.
Cheers.
Cheers.
If you love what we do, please rate and review our show. Or you can become a supporter by making a donation through buymeacoffee.com/scandalwaterpod. Whether a single gift or a recurring monthly donation, it would go a long way towards supporting our work and allowing us to keep the tea brewing.
At our website, www.scandalwaterpodcast.com, you can submit questions or your own story ideas, access our sources and show notes, see the merch we offer for sale, and more. You can join the Scandal Water community through our Scandal Water Podcast Facebook page or follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Scandal Water Podcast.
This episode was executive produced by Candy Thomas, that's me, and Ashley Raymer Brown.
That's me.
It was researched and written by Candy Thomas and edited by Ashley Raymer Brown.
A special thank you to Josh Martin, who wrote, composed, and performed the Scandal Water theme and other music. Matt C. Adams, who created the artwork, and Joshua Reith, who designed our website and provides ongoing technical support.
As a reminder, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes. The thoughts and opinions of the host during each episode of Scandal Water are their own and do not reflect the opinions of any future guests, advertisers, or clearly professional psychologists. Thanks for listening.